This is DuWayne Gregory, presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature. During my tenure, I promoted government transparency and open access to government. This show is brought to you with the intention of informing the public through community engagement. You will hear from various local officials, community advocates, and leaders. Please enjoy the show.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Gregory. And again, let me thank you for sponsoring this weekly program that brings information and personalities to the attention of the general public, primarily here on Long Island. So again, thank you. DuWayne Gregory Presents. I am your host, Andy C. Luter, and this program and production is a blend and a partnership between the presiding speaker of the Suffolk County Legislature, DuWayne Gregory, and Luter Life Coaches, which is an enterprise that is dedicated to helping you become the best you. It is actually a brother-sister team between myself and my two siblings. I'll talk a bit about that a little later, but it is co-sponsored by those two organizations. Friends, today I have a very special guest that I want to share with you in the person of Tanya Carter. Now, Tanya Carter is a well-known personality, and she is here with us today. And I am joined by my sister, Tanya Luter Gordon, who is also a principal member of Luter Life Coaches. And we're going to be talking to her about her career, her background, her growing up here on Long Island, and the many things that she does to make life here on Long Island, both in Nassau County and Suffolk County, the very best that it can be.
Tanya, so I know that you were born in Manhattan and you grew up in Long Island. So if you can just share with us what your experience was growing up.
You know, I grew up in a house of all girls. God help my father. However, you know, we were the Carter girls, the TLCs. Our initials remained the same. And no matter where we went, we looked alike. But in, you know, where we grew up, we were all one family. Exit 21 is what we called it in Roosevelt. And, you know, whether you were across the street, next door neighbor, we were all family. You know, my neighbors were the Delahants. That was my cousin, auntie, and uncle. And then there's my cousins across the street, the Jones family. Then if you go around the corner on Woods, you have my cousins, the Williams, and I'm sure they're watching it now, the Brown boys. And that, you know, we were all one family. And so, you know, whether you went to the store, whether you went to 4-H, whether you went to Girl Scout, you were with your family. So that is how my experience was in Long Island.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I always talk about PKs, preachers' kids. And we've all had so many similar, you know, experiences. And one of the things I always say with preachers' children is that either we're all in or we're all out. Very rarely do you find preachers' kids that are middle of the road. And again, that has a lot to do so much with our fathers that were pastors and our mothers that were part of the ministry, that was a priority. And so you had to understand and appreciate the pecking order. Now, of course, Bishop constantly says that family is your first ministry. And that's so exciting, but that is a shift, yes? Because generations and generations, that's not how it was.
That's correct.
Right?
I like what Bishop was saying.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Exactly.
Family should be first.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want you to kind of share with us what that experience was for you growing up as a preacher's kid, and of course you're an integral part of the ministry of your dad, Bishop Carter, and how all of that evolved.
Well, the church was founded when I was born, so that's my normal. I don't know anything else other than church. And, you know, when we came home from school, pack up your stuff, we're going to church. You know, when we had prayer service, you did your homework on your knees, and you were quiet about it because you're going to help him finish so you can talk to God. Everyone else is. So our entire life was the church. And even in church, we were all family. Again, you know, I have cousins, aunts and uncles, grandparents that are still there. Everybody, the babysat everyone's home. You know, I don't know if you know Nana from my church. She's almost 100. She babysat all of the generations. And in my house, we had to read the Bible. And, you know, today, well, let me just say, in the organization that we grew up in, we did not believe in women preachers. the most we could do was do missionary service. And now, you know, Bishop had a revelation. No, he said his sons and daughters shall call them to, you know, preach. And so my sisters, we're all ordained elders.
Awesome.
All four of us are ordained elders, and we all preach, and we all teach, and we do the laying of the hands, and we all fall out occasionally.
All right.
But we all experience church in any capacity, whether it's from the usher board, wherever we are needed, we're there.
That's
Family.
phenomenal. That is absolutely great. That is great. So I know that you have been such a blessing to the community, and the time that I've spent with you, and I personally can say and appreciate what you've done. And you do so much for so many people. And I want you to kind of share with us how you see your life, how it has unfolded, what you're doing, and where do you see you going from here?
You know what? I love working in politics. I will never forget visiting my grandmother for the last time in Ohio. My uncle was running for councilman, and he was walking down the street with this gentleman. I didn't know who it was, but I noticed that everywhere they walked, everybody was running out. And I said to my aunt, I said, who's that with my Uncle Gilbert? And she said, oh, that's Jesse Jackson. I didn't know who he was, but I just liked how the attention they were getting. So I jumped out. I said, well, I'm going with Uncle Gilbert. And I ran out in the middle of the street, and I grabbed my uncle's hand. And Jesse looked at me and looked at my uncle and said, who's this young lady? And he said, oh, that's my brother's daughter. She's visiting for the summer. And when I noticed that he didn't mind, I took his hand. And he said, okay, I'll take her hand. And then eventually I started doing what they were doing, lifted up my hands and began to wave at everybody because everybody was waving at us. And I said, whatever they're doing, I'm going to do it one day. And hence, I am now working in politics with Laura Kern, walking down that aisle with her.
And that's a perfect place for me to kind of break in and share with our audience that this program that is sponsored by DuWayne Gregory, who is the presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature. That's why this program is entitled DuWayne Gregory Presents. And the objective of this program is to bring to your attention individuals who are in the public square. Persons, names, and faces that you may not know, but these are shakers and movers who primarily work behind the scene and enhance the quality of life that you have as a citizen, either in Nassau County or in Suffolk County. Now, I know that my sister Tanya and my guest Tanya, and we're distinguishing them today by T-A and T-O. T-A is our guest because she spells her name T-A-N-Y-A. My sister is T-O because she spells her name T-O-N-Y-A. And up until this point, we have primarily been talking about the personal biography and profile of Tanya Carter. But the reason she is here is because of her public profile. She is one of the shakers and movers in Nassau County, and even though you may not be familiar with her, you may not know her name, you may not know her face, which is one of the reasons we are sharing her with you. She has one of the highest positions and profiles in all of Nassau County. Now, we have an assortment of individuals in Nassau County who give themselves to public service, and they are excellent public servants. But we have no more an influential person in all of county government as it relates to Nassau County than Tanya Carter. Why? Because she serves as the administrative assistant to the county executive. So, Ms. Carter, I want to shift just a little bit and move from your personal profile and biography and talk a bit about your public life, your life in politics, your life in public service. And before I talk about what you're doing now, let's go back to the beginning, because this is not your first position. This is not your first rodeo, so to speak, in public service. You have worked in educational institutions, local political government, and then, of course, where you are now. So let's go all the way back to the beginning and talk about your entrance into the public square and where that took place.
Okay, well, it took place with my dad. They had something in Nassau County. It's called the Nassau Council of Black Clergy. That was many years ago under Galata's administration. And Galata wanted to bring everybody into the politics. Now, with my father, each of the girls play a role with my father. I was more, I took care of my dad. My mom wanted me to cook for him and take care of his day-to-day. So his day-to-day, wherever that was, in politics or with the clergy or whatever, I was that person that was driving him around. So when Galata gave the money and wanted the clergy to work together as one big church, I played the bookkeeper, the receptionist, the secretary. And what would happen is we was at 404 Peninsula Boulevard, along with Pastor Boone, Pastor Burrell, Reverend White, Reverend James, Reverend Mackey, my father, you name them, they were all there, and they would all go to this place, 404 Peninsula Boulevard, and meet. And at that time, I would meet with all of the constituents, whatever they needed. If they didn't have enough money for their prescriptions, if they lacked clothes, food, housing, it wasn't for you or for you, it was for everybody. And it was my job to make sure that your need, your lack was fulfilled. And so he gave us a big, budget, and he told us, listen, now I want you to go to this store, Food Town or Casanova Meat Market, get some meat vouchers, get some food vouchers, get some coats, get some clothes, shoes, whatever they needed. And it was there that I said, you know what, I think I'm gonna stay here. And that's where it started. Then I moved up to I worked at Delta Airlines, and I worked in Delta Airlines in every capacity. I was there for maybe 14, 15 years. And after that, I said, you know what, I'm going to go back into politics. And I worked for Mayor Hardwick, who again, we were family. I make everyone my family, as you could tell. And then Mayor Robert Kennedy. Then I went to the school, Nassau Community College, and I served as working in the grants and helping school-age children that lacked in having funds for school, whether it was computers, whatever the family could not afford, we were to pick up that lack in that school. And then I went to the comptrollers. Now I'm with the county exec and the deputy county executives. I certainly don't want to leave them out because they play a huge role in the county. Each of them, Deputy County Executive Simmons, Deputy County Executive Tatum Fox, Deputy County Executive Kyle Rose Louder, Deputy County Executive Brian Schneider, Deputy County Executive John Chiara. We all work alongside with our County Executive Laura to bring the county together. And they let me, play that role with her. And they, instead of just working in the office, I also staff the county exec when she goes out in public, wherever she needs, wherever someone needs assistance in the public, that's where I pick up.
And I want to kind of talk about your position with the county executive, and we're going to talk just a moment about some of her initiatives. But before we talk about that, and I know this is not a faith-based program, but your story is actually an encapsulated testimony because you did not support Laura. You were not on her political team. You were not part of her landscape. But somehow, some way, if I was talking Bible, the Lord kind of opened the door. So let's talk about how you ended up in this position and how odd that was indeed.
It was odd because at the time when she was running, I was working for the comptroller Maragos. And so, yeah, he was my boss. And so of course, I was on his campaign party. And he didn't win. But I know this is not a faith-based, but I got to tell you all that I know what to do. I know I have to pray. I said, Lord Jesus, what am I going to do now? And I went back to the time when I was with my uncle. And I remembered that I was walking with Jesse Jackson and my uncle Gilbert. And my sisters and I, we used to play a game called Maylike. And May-like is sort of like a prayer. You know, so at that time, May-like was my prayer. And when I went to bed, I said, Lord, let's make like this is going to happen. I want to be able, when I grow up, I want to do just what they did. And I don't know what that was. I want to be able to do what they did, but this time I want to hold the hand of a lady. So I want to make like this is going to happen. Okay, God, you got it? So that's how I prayed as a little girl. So when Maragos lost, I prayed again, because now the county exec is a lady. And I went back to that prayer of what I said, May-like, and I began to pray. And I stayed right there. I didn't worry about anything else. I said, Lord, somehow, some way, you are going to make a way for me, because that I have no plan B. So I will wait on you. And I continued to do that. And somehow I got a call. I remembered visiting my dad. He was in the hospital, Long Island Jewish. And I got a phone call, and there was no reason for anyone to call me because I wasn't working. This was 2 weeks of her administration she was in. And Daddy said, well, what's that number? I said, I don't know. And I said, hello? And she said, yeah, this is Melissa Gallucci. I'm looking for Tanya Carter. I said, this is she. She said, I'm wondering, are you able to start tomorrow? For what? A job. We want to hire you. Oh, okay. Where would you like me to work? Could you work in the executive office? You mean 1550 Franklin? Sure. What time do you want me here? And that's how I got the job. I prayed. This is not a faith base, but you asked the question, and I'm answering. That's exactly what happened. And I tell you, it's been nothing but a miracle and an answered prayer ever since, because it's like I work well, we work well, everybody is now family at my job. The same way it was at Exit 21, the same way it was in Hardwick's office, the same way it was in Delta is in the county executive office. And where I didn't think I would fit in or that I was qualified, they qualified me because they wanted me to continue. So I am so grateful and honored for the position, because it was not just for me, it is to serve in the community, and it is to bring back and to give back into the community.
I think that is so exciting, so very, very exciting. In just a moment, I'm going to give way so that Tanya Luther Gordon can raise another question, but I want to kind of preface her question. And before I have her raise that question, Tanya, I want to kind of come back to you, because we almost glossed over your time period with the mayor. And that was an amazing part of your life. It was an amazing experience. And I'm convinced that it helped to rehearse and prepared you for where you are today. So talk just a bit about that experience with Mayor Hardwick, and then Tanya's going to come back and ask you just a quick question or two, because you all are doing some amazing things together. You've come together, and I want you all to talk about some of the exciting things and opportunities that may be on the horizon as a result of your recent conversation. But talk to us about the mayor.
Okay, so working with Mayor Hardwick was an amazing experience. I mean, here I am with family, that's all I know. Work with Cynthia and Melinda, we would work to assist people that were having issues with their with their homes, or they didn't know where to, how to help in employment or with school or with anything. Mayor Hardwick was that mayor that, whoever called, you make sure you answered that question before you went home, because if you couldn't help them, then your job was not done. That's how he was. And so we had a tally, and in any question we had to write it down to him, and then you had to go over it and debrief your day. How did you help them? Where did you send them to? And that's pretty much, that prepared me for where I am today, because I wasn't going home until they were happy.
Yes. So now, Mayor Hardwick, did he not make history?
He did.
And I really want you to speak to that, because even today, the fact that he was able to be the first, African American,
yes, he was. Mm-hmm. Mayor Hardwick was the first African American mayor in the village of Freeport, and that was huge, because he didn't just win the North Side, which they considered the African American side, he won the South and the North. Everybody was really ready for change. And I'm not sure what made them get to that, but there was something about Mayor Hardwick that they were willing to take that change with them and work with him, and they did, and he won by a huge margin, and they were just willing to give him the opportunity. So yes, he broke ground, he broke glass with that, and he was the first African American mayor there in the village of Freeport.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I know that you and the county executive have a very special and unique relationship. So it's not just a typical employer and employee. You've become dear, dear friends. And I want you to speak to us about that.
You know, I'd like to think that, you know, there's something special about Laura, is what I call her. When I was first hired, you know, I didn't work her campaign, so that is the concern that I had. Like, you know, they're probably going to throw something at me, or I might trip. And everybody received me with open arms, and was it a trick? You know, but it wasn't. And Laura came around because I sit on the DCE side, and at this time I was just solely for the DCE side, and she would come around and make sure I was, you know, comfortable and everything was all right, and I was, you know, really shocked at that. Then eventually she needed staffing, and I was requested. And then when I was requested, once I started, it just became like more of me than anyone else. And so Laura, when we would staff, we would have an opportunity to talk in the car. And we just became, I say, girls, friends. We work out together. Yes. I didn't do that as much. She's very athletic. I'm not. But now we do, and I do consider her friend. I thought it was something special about me until I started talking to the DCEs, and they were like, oh, you know, me and Laura went, and I was like, oh, wait, did you go? Oh yeah, you know, we meant to call you. So everyone there feels as special as I do.
Yes.
But she does that with everyone in the office. We are all like, okay, well, if we're all related to Laura, we're all one family. They would go on trips, you know, to Washington, of course, for business, and they would, you know, Tanya, you got to take Tanya.
Yes. So I know that you have facilitated an opportunity for me to meet Laura, and so I can personally say at the different events that we go to, she is so gracious.
Yeah, she said you are a very lovely person. I said she really is, and that's how she is all the time. And the entire family is like that, even the church. So everyone is very gracious, and so yes, she did say that.
Yes, yes. So it's been a pleasure, and that means so much to me, because there are times that people are blessed and fortunate enough to be in high places, and you know, for you to open up the doors that you have even for me, I just want to personally thank you, just to be able to eat, to be able to meet some of the principals in Nassau County. And that has meant so much, because everything's about relationships.
It is. But you know, they did it for me. They opened doors for me, and doors that I didn't even know were available. They showed me. I didn't discuss Mike Santarama. Mike Santarama, I mean, he was the one. He said, you know, I think that we need to have Tanya on some of the events and for the parades. I kind of stood back, and he said, why are you back there? Come on up here with us. And you up here with Laura and the governor? He said, yes. I ran up there, quick, fast, and very fast, and lifted up my hands the way I did with Jesse Jackson, and he said, this is where she belongs. So he opened up that door for me.
Now, I know you've also told me that you've had several opportunities to interact and engage with Governor Cuomo. So talk to us about those experiences.
Oh boy, I tell you, Mike Santarama, you know, did that when I would staff with Laura, and I remember the first time I was like, let me stand in the back, because, you know, you don't want to go to the front unless you're invited. And so I was in the back, and Mike said, why are you back there? Come on up here with us. I said, you mean up there with them? And he said, yes. And Governor Cuomo saw that interaction, that the way I responded. He said, "Come on up with me." And Laura said, "Go ahead." So when he was going to shake the hands, I was going to shake the hands. And he had people taking pictures as if I needed to take a picture with them. I mean, I wasn't. They didn't know, the constituents didn't know who I was. They just wanted me to think it was all right, you go ahead. And he made me feel comfortable. Then occasionally he would stop and say, "Take a picture with us."
Oh.
And I captured that moment. I will never forget that day. And I will never forget Mike Santarama for that opportunity. And anytime Laura does go and he's there, they always say, "Make sure you bring Tanya." And he makes sure, Governor always comes to me, speaks to me, and makes me feel that I'm one of the group.
That's wonderful.
Well, listen, friends, I am sure that it is obvious and apparent that we have so much to talk about. This is the first of actually 2 segments that we're doing with Tanya Carter, because we wanted to share so much with you regarding who she is, what she is, how she is making inroads and impact, how effective she is in the office of the county executive. And so we're going to bring this segment to a close, but I want you to stay tuned, because in a future program we're having Tanya Carter back, where we're going to continue this conversation. Again, this is DuWayne Gregory Presents. I am Andy C. Luter. I'm here with Tanya Luter Gordon. We represent Luter Life Coaches, and it is a tandem team of ourselves and DuWayne Gregory. So again, thank you for watching this segment. Look for more in a future segment. Let's go back to our host, DuWayne Gregory.
We have reached the conclusion of this show, and I hope you have found it to be very informative. Until next time, Presiding Officer DuWayne Gregory.